Happy New Year and happy 20th anniversary to Diablo 3. To celebrate, the guys at Diablo have put together an exciting remaster of the original Diablo 1 game, which is currently in a patch in Diablo 3 called the Darkening of Tristram. I believe it's patch 243 for PC users. Console users, don't know what it's called, but it's the same thing, I'm sure. Take everything you remember about Diablo 1, remaster it slightly, and import it into the Diablo 3 engine. So the old-looking user interface, the way your character walked, very kind of, staticky, like dot, 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 dot. The blurry anti-aliasing over everything, the old enemies, the old enemy sound effects. Even the Butcher makes an appearance. And you go through the labyrinth just like you did before, all 16 levels, to fight against the Dark Lord himself, Diablo. And you're awarded at the end with a cutscene of the original Diablo 1, how your character takes the crystal and shoves it into their head, thereby sealing their fate for Diablo 2. I got to play through it with my wife. We played through it last night. The first adventure was to get her computer out of mothballs, which had been not used for about 3 years. Going through and updating Windows and drivers and getting that old i7, like the original i7, back to life was quite a chore. But we got it up and running, set her up, and we decided we were going to jump into the adventure together. We played on Torment 1, probably could have bumped it up significantly higher. I was playing with my Barbarian, Paragon 173. She was playing with her Crusader, Paragon 4748. And we went through the adventure. It took us about 3 hours, 3.5 hours or so to complete from beginning to end. The level design is, the random Diablo design as it has always been. It was fun. However, I feel like the charm wore off very quickly. And it kind of reminds me of vanilla Diablo 3 when it came out. If you guys remember how good Diablo 3 was, that first act with the bookcases that collapsed to hurt enemies and the environments, things you could click on, the chandeliers that would drop down, the polish that went into all the tomes to kind of walk you through what was coming up next, the different elements that you went through, going whether it was in the castles or in the crypts or all the different, going through the town and all the cellars. It was a very diverse environment. Now, Diablo 1 is not that, and the Darkening of Tristram is not that. It is the original Diablo 1, so it's very repetitive, and I understand that, but I'm frustrated because they didn't spice it up enough. So the first few levels, you do find books, these dark tomes, which were injected into this, which I liked, and the dark narrator, I don't know who he was, some creepy guy, was kind of walking you through, what the levels were. Not like, hey, when we were making this game, it wasn't like breaking the fourth wall or anything, but there was an area you go through, you may remember it from the original Diablo, where everything is really hard to see. I think it's called the Blackened Halls. Maybe that's not what it's called. Anyways, your light level is reduced to almost zero. You have to rely on the minimap almost entirely to navigate through this level. And right before there's a book, and this guy gives you the narrator about like how the darkness was absorbed, the light was absorbed by the darkness, and beware anyone who enters. There's crypts and ghouls, and it was kind of neat. It kind of set the pace of like, oh, this is neat. Now we blew through the area in about 3 minutes because we were overpowered, and it wasn't really much of a threat. There really wasn't much of a threat at anything. And again, we probably could have put the torment level on higher, but that's not really important. The important thing is that as we're going through it, these books were really cool, and then they just stopped. Completely stopped. So around the level 4 or 5th of the labyrinth, there were no more books. And we are completionists. We check every single square inch of that map, break every pot, a bookcase, urn, whatever, to find treasure. So it was kind of disappointing that you had this really cool lore that started up at the beginning and stopped. And that's why I say it's kind of like the original Diablo 3, the vanilla Diablo 3 if it were, because you remember how good Act 1 was, as I just talked about, all the diversity of the levels and the areas you explored. And then you get into Act 2, 3, and 4, and it progressively, the quality diminishes. It's, Act 2 is almost entirely out in the desert. It's not a lot of variety. The destructible environments are gone, the books start to wane off, and that's exactly what happens in this Darkening of Tristram, where the first few levels are awesome, and then it just falls apart. And by the end, it really is a slog, and it's like, okay. there is some nostalgia. You do get to compete and fight against the old guys that you fought back in Diablo 1. There's not really a whole lot of shrines, though. There's not really a lot of variety. And once the nostalgia starts, it's there and it's rewarding, but it doesn't really last. And I feel like they could have done more to inject current elements of Diablo 3 into that. And I think that's where it is a kind of falls apart. Now, Blizzard has said that they're only running this for 1 month, and at the end of this month, they're going to take it away, and it's going to be an annual thing, so we will not see it again until next year. So there is an opportunity that they may tweak it somehow. They may go back and put more lore in, and maybe even break the fourth wall a little bit and have narrator, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I was the lead designer on Diablo, and this is our thought. That would be neat, too. Just something different to break it up. I mean, a celebration of Diablo is cool. To go back and play the original is very cool, especially with our current character. You can continue to earn gold, Paragon levels. We had no good drops at all. All our drops were garbage. I got a few legendaries, and maybe because we were in Torment 1, but they were all garbage. Everything I had was salvaged. Everything my wife had was salvaged. You do get a really cool little side quest at the end, which ultimately leads you to go to like the cow level, but it was back when the cows were alive and happy. And you can get a cow companion, which is kind of neat. And there are Wirts in there and Griswold's there. So there's some throwback to the old stuff, and I do appreciate that. But overall, I feel that the experience could have been more than it was. And for how much they hyped this up, hearing back this way back in BlizzCon, hyping it up. And we haven't really had a lot of Diablo stuff other than the Reaper of Souls, which is kind of old. World of Warcraft definitely still gets more of the attention, especially now. Heroes of the Storm with all the new heroes constantly coming out. StarCraft's been kind of stagnant. Diablo's definitely been stagnant. So this was kind of like the big hurrah for Diablo 3 to kind of re-inject the base, get my wife back into it who hasn't played it in forever, get me back into it who hasn't played it in forever, but it didn't really hook me. And now that I've completed it, I really don't have any desire to go back and do it again unless, I don't know, a friend wants some help and maybe we can jack the Torment level up and try to grind through and get some better gear or something. But after it was all said and done, it was like, okay, that was cool, I guess. And that's kind of unfortunate because I don't think that's what they wanted us to take away from this, and that's not what I wanted to take away from this. I wanted to just say, man, Diablo 3, look, I mean, am I not a super fan? Like, hello, I wanted Diablo 3 to be like, blow me away, and this Darkening of Tristram to really invigorate the base, get all my friends back into it, revitalize the clan, start doing greater riff runs again, and let's go play and let's go find all the secrets in this new area. And they had a lot of time to cultivate this, and I really don't feel like they did too much. The maps were very small, the zones were very small. The nostalgia, though, like I said, I think they were really hoping that the nostalgia would carry it more than it did, but the content really just didn't weigh out at the end, and it kind of just fell flat. So that's my thoughts on the Darkening of Tristram. If you haven't had a chance to play it, you have to do it this month. Patch 243 on PC. Not sure what it is on Xbox or PlayStation, but I'm sure you guys can figure it out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Get out there, play some Diablo, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.